The cameras flashed, the crowd roared, but for a few seconds, time seemed to stop, as Jamie Dornan turned toward Dakota Johnson on the red carpet, and their eyes met. It was just a glance, a smile, maybe 2 words whispered between them. Yet somehow, that tiny moment set the entire internet on fire. It had been years since the world last saw them together like this, side by side, elegant, effortless, and radiating that same chemistry that made 50 Shades of Grey a global phenomenon. But what happened that night was different. It wasn't scripted, it wasn't rehearsed, it felt real. As Dakota walked toward the press line, the crowd erupted. Photographers called her name, flashes flickered across her silver gown. And then, Jamie appeared. Dressed in a classic tuxedo, calm and composed, but the moment he spotted her, something changed. His eyes softened. He smiled, not the practiced, red carpet smile, but the kind that comes from familiarity. From memory. From something unspoken. The internet caught it instantly. Within hours, hashtags like #Jamie and Dakota and #unspoken were trending worldwide. Fans flooded social media with slow-motion clips, zooming in on every detail. The way he looked at her. The way she brushed her hair back nervously. The way their laughter seemed to echo through the chaos. "You can't fake that," one fan tweeted. "You can't act that kind of connection." But was it really love? Or just nostalgia wrapped in red carpet glamour? To understand why this moment hit so deeply, you have to go back to where it all began, 10 years ago, when Jamie Dornan and Dakota Johnson first met as co-stars. They were both young, ambitious, and completely unprepared for the kind of fame that 50 Shades would bring. Overnight, they became symbols of passion and desire, their on-screen chemistry sparking global obsession. But behind the scenes, something more genuine was taking shape. They weren't just colleagues, they became each other's confidants. Jamie often said in interviews that Dakota was the only person who truly understood what that experience was like. Dakota, in turn, described him as a safe place. Their friendship grew quietly, away from the spotlight, built on trust, laughter, and shared chaos. Years later, even after the final film wrapped, fans continued to link them. Every time one mentioned the other in an interview, the internet went wild. Still, both of them avoided feeding the rumors. They moved on. Jamie returned to his family life with Amelia Warner, while Dakota's relationship with Chris Martin made headlines. But that bond, that invisible thread between them, never seemed to fade. And then came the red carpet. Jamie had arrived early, greeting photographers and fans as usual. Dakota joined later, walking down the same carpet, glowing as if she owned the night. When she saw him, her expression changed, subtle, but unmistakable. Her smile widened, her shoulders relaxed. And when they finally stood side by side for photos, the world witnessed a kind of magic that can't be written into a script. Interviewers nearby whispered about the tension, not awkward, but electric. A journalist later described it as, two people who know exactly what they mean to each other, but will never say it out loud. As they posed for the cameras, Jamie leaned closer and said something that made Dakota laugh, genuinely laugh, the kind that lights up her whole face. For that brief second, it wasn't two movie stars. It was just Jamie and Dakota, the way fans had always imagined them when no one else was watching. When asked afterward about seeing Dakota again, Jamie smiled gently and said, "We'll always have a special bond. You go through something that intense with someone, it stays with you." Those words, calm, measured, but filled with meaning, reignited every theory fans ever had. Was he referring to their shared history as co-stars? Or something deeper, something he couldn't quite say aloud? As one journalist wrote the next morning, if you watched the way he looked at her, you'd stop asking questions. You'd already know the answer. Whatever the truth, that red carpet reunion reminded the world of one thing. Some connections never fade. They evolve, they mature, they hide behind polite smiles and professional distance, but they never truly disappear. And when Jamie Dornan looked at Dakota Johnson that night, you could see it, the spark, the tenderness, the history. So maybe the question isn't whether they really love each other. Maybe it's whether they ever stopped. When the lights dimmed and the flashes stopped, the real story began. Not on the carpet, but behind it. Away from the noise, away from the questions, Jamie Dornan and Dakota Johnson found themselves standing together again. No cameras, no audience, just two people who had shared more history than most would ever know. Witnesses backstage described the moment as surprisingly intimate. Dakota had just finished a round of interviews and was adjusting her gown when Jamie approached her, a soft smile on his face. He said something that made her laugh, quietly, warmly, the kind of laugh that can only come from years of knowing someone. She looked up at him like no time had passed, said one event staff member. It wasn't romantic in an obvious way, but there was something real. Like two people who still care, even if they can't say it. That brief exchange didn't last long, maybe a minute or two, but somehow, it carried the weight of everything left unsaid between them. Later, fans would analyze a behind-the-scenes clip that surfaced online, a blurry video of Jamie gently fixing the train of Dakota's dress before she walked away. It was a small gesture, easily missed, but it sent the internet spiraling. That's not acting, one user wrote. That's instinct. For many, that moment confirmed what they had always believed, that Jamie and Dakota share a bond that runs deeper than friendship or nostalgia. A connection built not on romance alone, but on trust, comfort, and unspoken affection. But how did they both see it? When asked later about the reunion, Jamie chose his words carefully. "It's always great to see her," he said during a press junket. "We've been through a lot together. There's a lot of respect there, a lot of love, too, in a way that only we understand." It was that last phrase, "in a way that only we understand," that broke the internet. Fans replayed it over and over, convinced he had finally admitted something deeper. The comments poured in. "He finally said it, he still loves her. They're soulmates who met at the wrong time. You can't fake that kind of emotion, not after all these years." Dakota, too, was asked about the moment. In her usual calm, composed tone, she smiled and said, "Jamie will always be my person. We grew up together through something that changed our lives forever." The choice of words, "my person," ignited another wave of speculation. Journalists called it the quote of the year. Others said it was proof that no matter what their current relationships look like, Jamie and Dakota's emotional connection had never truly ended. Those who have worked with them say their bond is one of quiet loyalty. "They don't talk every day," said a close friend, "but when they do, it's like no time has passed. They have this deep understanding, almost telepathic." And perhaps that's why their reunion hit so hard. It wasn't about romance or scandal. It was about two people whose souls had once collided in such a powerful way that even years later, they still carried the echo. At the end of the event, as Dakota prepared to leave, Jamie was seen standing near the exit, speaking with her team. Before walking out, she turned back, just for a second, and smiled at him. He smiled back, no words, no drama, just a simple look that said everything neither of them could say out loud. That look became the photograph seen around the world, the one plastered across headlines with the caption, "Do they still love each other?" Maybe love isn't always about being together. Maybe it's about never losing that softness for someone, even after everything has changed. Because the truth is, not every connection needs a label. Not every bond needs to be defined. Some just are. They exist quietly, in the spaces between words, in the shared glances, in the way two people carry each other's presence long after life has moved on. For Jamie and Dakota, that red carpet moment wasn't a reunion, it was a reminder. A reminder of who they were, what they built together, and the rare kind of affection that time cannot erase. As one fan perfectly wrote under a photo of them that night, "Maybe they're not in love now, but they loved, deeply, honestly, and enough for a lifetime." And maybe that's what everyone saw that evening, not a scandal, not a secret affair, but the pure, lingering trace of something beautiful. Because when Jamie Dornan looked at Dakota Johnson under those lights, he wasn't seeing an old co-star. He was seeing a memory come to life. One that still makes him smile, and maybe ache, just a little. And as Dakota walked away, her smile lingering like a whisper in the air, the world finally understood. Sometimes, love doesn't need to be shouted. Sometimes, it only needs to be seen.